Kenyans were determined to fight to death for their land and freedom. In any case, other armed conflicts in the continent had been inspired by activities of militant nationalists in Kenya. In 1954, the Algerian War broke out. In 1958, open war also broke out in the Congo. Days of imperialism in Africa were coming to a close. In 1955, and in a move to preserve their own private interests, Indians formed their own party called the Kenya Indian Congress, KIC. Here, they supported the Little Constitution. They also advocated for Africans' increased representation in the Legislative Council and supported the idea of multiracialism and multiracial government. N.S. Mangat was its president. In a rather desperate and futile attempt to preserve minority social, political, economic hegemony over Kenyans, white settlers also formed parties. Among these were the Convention of Association, CA, and the Electors' Union, EU. The Electors' Union died out later in 1955, and in its place the European Union, EU, was formed. It was under the leadership of George Nicol. The United Country Party, UCP, was formed by Michael Blundell.
On July 10th,
Blundell's party supported Littleton in 1956.
Mr. Michael Blundell, leader of the European elected members, a body formed by the white settlers, strongly criticizes as ineffectual the present action being taken by the government. The feeling runs high among the settlers, for it is the ultimate aim of the Mau Mau to drive them all from Africa.
Tension between black and white was rising.
I remember a settler saying to me, "You young district officers know nothing. We've been here for years. We know our boys," as they used to call them. "We know the boys. We know all about them. You don't know anything." And it was the difference between knowing. The settler did know a lot. He did know a lot about Africans, how to handle African labour, how to use African labour, but he could not see what the use of that labour and the production of money was beginning to bring about.
Back in Nyandarua war front, in early 1955, Field Marshal Kimathi was elected as the Prime Minister by the Kenya Parliament. Field Marshal Macharia Kimemia took his new role as the commander of the 8 land and freedom armies operating in different regions of the country. Whether in the forest, village, towns, or in the city, Kenyans were bent on winning this war for self-determination at all costs. Around the end of 1955, the Federal Independence Party, FIP, was formed. Its founders were Major B.P. Roberts and L.E. Viger. These leaders opposed the Littleton Constitution and called for provincial autonomy or Majimbo system in an attempt to foster national unity and to rise above the many divisive tribal barriers. Political parties formed at the district level combined to form a political alliance called African Elected Members, AEMO, 1957.
We have always stated that our independence cannot be complete if in fact there is any part of the world where the black man is not accorded his rightful position in society.
Through AEMO, leaders worked hard to break white dominance through constitutional means. In 1959, however, AEMO broke into 2 factions, namely the Kenya National Party, KNP, and the Kenya Independence Movement, KIM. KIM's leaders were Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Dr. Gikonyo Kiano, and Tom Mboya. National Party, KNP, was for the formation of multiracial government dominated by Europeans, while KIM's KIM advocated for African majority rule. By this time, power center had shifted from Nyandarua Forest to Mount Kenya Warfront. Power had passed down to Field Marshal by Munge, Muthoni, and Mwariama after the capture and murder of Dedan Kimathi back in 1957. In 1960, Mboya's Congress Party, CPC, formed after defeating CMG Agwin Kodek back in 1957, joined forces with the Kenya Independent Movement, KIM, and the Kenya African Union, KAU, to form the Kenya African National Union, KANU, KANU. The leaders of this new party were James Gishoro as the acting president, Dr. Njoroge Mungai, the secretary, Ngala, Dr. Julius Gekono Kiano, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, and Agwin Kodek. Tom Mboya later became its Secretary General. By this time, the 1954 Lytton Constitution and the 1958 Lennox Boyd Constitution, which advocated for multiracial government under white dominance, had already suffered defeat in the hands of militant nationalists. On June 25, 1960, and under the instigation of the colonial government and white settlers, members of the Kenya National Party, KNP, now Kamatusa, joined forces with other moderate leaders to form the Kenya African Democratic Union, KADU, at Ngong. The party leaders were R. Ngala, Moi, and M. Muliro. KADU was a reactionary party formed in opposition to more militant KANU. KADU pressed for federal constitution Majimbo. In the elections of February 1961, KANU won 18 of the 33 African seats, while KADU won 11. 20 seats were reserved by quota for Europeans, Asians, and Arabs. KANU, however, chose not to form the first African government, insisting that Jomo Kenyatta should first be released from prison.
Certainly, yes. How? Again, by intensifying our efforts and more pressure on the British government and also the Kenya government, and using whatever influences we've gained from this present constitution for further efforts to secure his release.
This defiance prompted the British to entice Ngala to temporarily form the first African government as a prime minister. KADU government with electoral and parliamentary minority support 1963. In August of 1961, Jomo Kenyatta was finally released from prison. In October the same year, he became the president of KANU. In June 1st, 1963, Kenyatta formed the first internal self-government as the prime minister, with Oginga Odinga as the vice president.
You believe that one day
KANU became the official opposition.
Africans.
Growth and development of political parties in Kenya had come of age. Kenya regained its political independence in 1963 and became a republic in 1964. This had been made possible by the efforts of militant nationalists. On 15 November 1964, Ngala announced dissolution of KADU. This made Kenya a one-party state. Though not legally, at least this lasted till the Constitutional Amendment Act No. 7 of 1982, which introduced Section 2A. This section changed Kenya from a de facto, de jure, one-party state, hence making Kenya a one-party state by law. In 1966, Oginga Odinga, together with Bildad Kagia, formed the Kenya People's Union, KPU. This was 1 year after the assassinations of Field Marshal Bai Munge, General Chui, and 4 other former Land and Freedom Army generals in February 1965. With the resignation of Odinga as the vice president, Moi became the vice president instead. KU came about due to irreconcilable political ideologies between radicals and conservatives in KANU, especially on matters touching on foreign policy, economic development, and the injustice of the million-acre scheme scam. KPU was, however, banned in 1969 after the assassination of Tom Mboya.
When Mau Mau was on the rampage and Jomo Kenyatta was given the image of a monster, because his own image was so ghastly in the sight of whites, the image of Tom Mboya immediately became acceptable. Because Kenyatta seemed to be so irresponsible, Mboya became responsible. He became acceptable, responsible, and made everybody happy. So they supported him. They backed him up, made him prominent throughout the world. Kenyatta made him. He didn't make himself. And he was intelligent enough to know it. So when Kenyatta got out, he supported Kenyatta. He realized that the contribution of Kenyatta made him what he was. And because he was intelligent enough, he was blessed with sufficient insight to see the role that Kenyatta and Mau Mau played in his own prominence and image of respectability and acceptability. He continued to support Kenyatta.
Its leaders, including Achieng' Oneko, were detained after political unrest related to Kenyatta's visit to Nyanza province. No new opposition parties had formed after this. Hence, KANU became the sole political party in Kenya.
Let us hope that change there will be. But this change cannot be in terms of pious resolutions and words. It's got to be translated into action. For it is only then that we shall know that there is a definite departure from the